During the war, or as the Japanese approached in Papua New Guinea in Milne Bay, eastern Papua, where our Australian missionaries had not too long begun their mission, as the Japanese approached, the order was given by the superior, everybody out. This is Mission Live. You're with Roger in the MSC Mission Office. Our Australian MSCs first went to Port Moresby, and I think I've mentioned this before, that Bishop Alan de Bomenu needed an English-speaking priest in Port Moresby, as the Australian population there was English-speaking, obviously. Then in the 1930s, I think about 34, we moved and took over the Vicariate of Eastern Papua, whatever that was called at the time. And we were just getting started there. So with the coming of the Japanese, and they were coming closer, and it was realised that they were coming around through Milne Bay to take Port Moresby because they wanted to secure the Torres Straits. So then the superior at the time, Father George Vincent Taylor, ordered everybody out. And others argued that we're just getting started. The people are just beginning to know us and trust us. If we leave now, they won't want anything to do with us when we come back. But he's a strong man, and he said, everybody out. So they did. They moved off to Moresby, and stories go on from there. One priest stayed behind, Father Barney Baldwin. He stayed behind. He had a small boat. His aim was to keep in touch with the people, keep things alive as best he could, until the people, other missionaries could return. So he did. So there was one interesting little story in the bay itself, Milne Bay, which is a fairly big body of water. He was in his little boat and he was moving slowly along the south side of the bay. And this Japanese fighter plane came over, a Zero, that came over and spotted him and circled around and come back, and with the intention of strafing him. So Barney ties the wheel so that the boat would keep going straight, threw a rope over the back into the water and jumped over into the water, held onto the rope as the boat chugged along and went forward. So the Japanese fighter plane shot up the deck house and the deck and continued on his way. So then Barney hauled himself back onto the boat and kept on his way. So he spent his time of the war keeping in touch with the people, dodging the Japanese, and survived the war. He later spent many years on the Trobriand Islands, where he got to know the people very well. Another interesting little story in that was another priest who'd been out in that area, Father Norbert Earl. When he got to Moresby, he fronted up to the army and enrolled as a chaplain. And then he wrote a letter to the provincial to tell him what he'd done. So he spent the war as a chaplain in the army, and he is famous for going across the Kokoda Trail with the Australian troops. And many stories, he told us many stories about that when I was a young student, and a most entertaining storyteller. One day he was asked to give us a day of recollection, a one-day retreat, supposed to be very spiritual. Well, Norby simply told us lots of stories about his time across Kokoda Trail and many other things about the missions. And that was probably a good day to do recollection because it was very inspiring. He was this man who'd been out there really in the thick of things and had done all of that. One day he said he was walking along somewhere near a camp with two other pastors. One was a Baptist, one was United LMS or whatever, Lutheran. And they were walking along, and up above in a tree there was a Japanese sniper who opened fire on them. And he said the guy on his right hand side went down, wounded, and as he bent down to pick him up, he said, One bullet went through my hat and one went through my shirt. And that's how he survived, and he told us many other stories about that. So his life started out in one direction, events overtook him, the war, and so he enlisted and went in another direction. Ever after that, whenever he was in Sydney, when he was retired here, he had almost an endless round of visiting of those soldiers and their families and their descendants. So he had a real mission here with those people for many years afterwards. So the mission rolls on. Thank you for being with us.